Hey everybody, it's Nikki. Welcome to Spill the Milk. You guys know me, it's Baby Whisperer on most of my social media handles. Today, we're going to talk about a big one. It's all this sleep training and why it's not working for you and what do you do and what should you expect and all those questions I get from all of you moms. I'm going to set the scene really quickly. And I'm going to ask you to ask yourself this internal question. If I were to put you into a room where there were no windows and no light, there was no app and you had no clock, would you know when to feed your baby? Because if you say no, I need to give you a hug. You have entrusted when to feed your baby by something that has no information. You are using an app to tell you when to feed your baby. How about we do this? Let's talk about this. Why don't we do this? It's time to eat versus you look hungry. There's a big one right there. I want you to think about what these words really mean. It's time to eat or you look hungry. I would rather you do the you look hungry and then feed your baby versus it's 2:00, it's time to eat. Well, what happens if 1:30 your baby looked hungry? Here's what can happen. And here's what I think you guys need to know is that we are telling you that your baby has the ability to do something that they just simply cannot do. If you are a breastfeeding mama and you are looking at scheduling and having a regimented time of when to feed your baby, you're going to run into problems. You need to understand your baby's hunger signs and feeding cues. So let's get into it. Your breast, they don't keep time. They keep score. Milk production works on supply and demand. Every time milk is removed, the body says, make more milk. Every time it's not removed, the body, after time, might say, make less milk. So what this looks like is your app or your book tells you at 2:00 your baby is supposed to go to sleep. But your baby is giving you hunger signs and feeding cues. And instead of listening to the hunger signs and feeding cues, you're trying to put it to sleep. Less exposure to breast, less removal of breast milk. That can lead to low supply. So if you start stretching or cutting out those feeds, you're doing fewer removals, which can send messages to your body to not make much milk. The research shows that moms who breastfeed frequently in those early weeks have higher long-term milk production and better infant weight gain compared to those on a schedule. Now, night feeds, they matter too. And this is where some of those books, I'm not going to name them, but they're out there, are telling you your baby needs to sleep so many hours every night. Breast milk babies, they simply can't really do this, you guys, because breast milk is super pure. So breastfeeding on demand, or what some people call responsive feeding, means watching your baby's cues and not the clock. Well, what are those cues? This is where we miss out. This is where someone doesn't support us. Crying is a late sign of hunger. Your baby sent you several messages before they started crying that they were hungry. But because you kept looking at your clock or your timer or your app on your phone, you weren't listening to your baby. Those babies in those first 12 weeks, they lick the air, they put their hands in their mouth. They get a little noisier. Those are all feeding cues. That's time to feed the baby. And I don't care if it's time for the baby to sleep. We got to feed him first. So you eat when you're hungry. So why shouldn't your baby? Your baby needs to be fed when they're hungry. Most breast milk fed babies take smaller, more frequent meals. And that's because the stomach capacity and the fat content of your milk all change from day to day. When we start forcing a 3 or 4 hour gap because the book said so, we're not teaching structure. We're missing signals and we're not trusting ourselves. We're not listening to our baby. Chasing a clock teaches you the clock, not your baby. And no, you can't really overfeed that breast milk fed baby at breast, you guys. They'll simply just stop suckling as much and they'll receive less. That's part of the beauty of breastfeeding. It builds your baby the ability to self-regulate from day one. What can strict schedules do? Well, I've kind of already talked about it, but sleep training and feeding schedules, they sound really neat on paper, right? And those books that you can read, it sounds really neat. Sounds super easy. But there's no emotional involvement in those books. It doesn't tell you that your baby's going to fight it. It doesn't tell you the emotional toll it's going to take. It can cause low supply because less frequent removal, right? You're not feeding on demand. You're feeding by a clock or an app or a book. So less milk removal, less milk. Slower weight gain. Those babies can miss those feeds. They're missing out on calories. But if you're also waiting until your baby is super hungry and crying, now they've burned calories before they're even able to eat because you've made them burn more calories to get to breast. Some of the biggest ones are frustrated parents. Man, because babies who are hungry, they won't train to sleep. They're going to be upset. They cry until they're fed. Don't let them get there. Just feed them. Another thing that strict schedules can make you have is a lost connection. A lost connection with you and your baby. You're not learning your baby. You're not learning your baby's cues. You start doubting your instincts because a book told you that at 2 o'clock your baby needed to nap. But your baby is giving you hunger signs, but you're trusting the book and you're saying, oh, no, 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 it's time to sleep. It's teaching you self-doubt. This part of it is not about guilt, but it's about biology. Scheduled feeding wasn't designed for breastfeeding. It came from formula routines, which run on a totally different system. Hear me out on this. Breast milk and formula, the things that they have in common is that they are a way to feed your baby. That's it. They don't function the same. They are a way to feed your baby. But here's what you want to know, and here's what you need to know. Formula babies and breast milk babies act different. The reason for this is because breast milk empties from their stomach in 45 to 60 minutes because it's pure. That doesn't mean if you give more, they're going to last longer. It's breast milk. It's gone. 45 to 60 minutes. All the studies tell us that. But formula can take 2 to 3 hours to digest. So those schedules work out better. That means breast milk is used in the body faster. It's absorbed quickly in the gut because it's designed for human babies. It contains enzymes, live cells, and carbohydrates your baby can break down easily. And if they break it down easily, they're going to want it again sooner. Formula is made with cow's milk protein and starches and takes longer to digest. So babies, quote, stay fuller longer. But it's artificial fullness. And again, nothing is wrong with formula. It is a way to feed your baby. But we can't get a formula baby and a breast milk fed baby to act the same because of the digestibility of the food you're giving. So when your breastfed baby wakes to feed again, that's not a problem. Your baby's doing exactly what they're meant to do. Breast milk isn't supposed to sit in the stomach for hours. It's meant to move fast, absorb fast, and be replaced often. So what can you do instead? Well, what you can do instead is first just understand your baby doesn't have the ability lots of times to go and be on a regimented schedule because they're growing at such a rapid rate. Here's what works better. Respond early to the cues. Stop putting it off and start trying to push them out longer for a feed. Just get into the feed and do it. Stirring, rooting their hands, hand to mouth. Don't wait for crying. Just respond to those early cues. If you decide to give your baby a bottle, great, give the baby the bottle, but pump to replace the feed to secure that milk supply is there. Focus on comfort, not control. Give your baby comfort if that's what they need. Contact naps. Dim the lights. Don't watch the clock. And get help if you're unsure. Reach out to a board-certified lactation consultant who can focus on, hey, this is just kind of normal. Breast milk fed babies usually aren't scheduled out babies for those first 12 weeks especially. Okay? And now we're going to talk about this. There's a lot of myths out there that I think really need to be busted. And we would really need to get into these. A big myth is babies need to learn to go 3 to 4 hours between feeds. You guys, breast milk fed babies likely can't. And you know this. You're giving them pure food. It's digested very quickly. They shouldn't have to learn that. They need to grow. Guess how they grow? Food. You want them to sleep better? Feed them more often. 3 to 4 hours is a formula schedule, not a breast milk schedule. Breast milk digests faster. Most breast milk fed babies feed 8, 10, 12, sometimes more times per day. That doesn't mean that you take the number 8 and divide it into 24. That means on demand at the cues, at the early cues. There's another big one out there that night feeds are just habits. Now listen, I know this, that a 3, 4, 5, 6-month-old, they may start waking to eat more at night. Well, that's because they're eating less during the day because they're more interactive. Night feeds aren't just habits. They're waking to eat. Feed them. Feed them. If you're feeding breast milk responsively, more bottles don't equal better growth because it's still digested just as rapidly. I've seen a lot of moms in virtual consultations say things to me that I know they would not have said if they hadn't had been influenced in some other way. A lot of things I hear are, well, it's time for my baby to go to sleep, but they're hungry. What should I do? Now, without anxious thinking, you can automatically answer that question and go, well, feed your baby if they're hungry. But moms get so wrapped up in these books and these training apps and all these things that they think they're doing something wrong by feeding their baby when their baby's hungry. There is nothing wrong with offering your breast milk fed baby breast milk. It's never wrong. If they're not hungry, they're not going to eat. But remember, breastfed babies go to breast for comfort as well, and they still get drops of nutrition. So you want your baby to grow, you got to feed them. You got to feed them when they're hungry. So if you're in those foggy, sleepless weeks, girl, I see you. You're not doing anything wrong by feeding your baby when they're hungry. You're doing the biologically right thing. Your milk is digested faster because it's made perfectly for your baby. Your baby wakes often because they're smart enough to listen to their body. You need to allow them to do it. So instead of fighting it, let's just work with it, understand it. Feed your baby, protect your supply, and get the right support instead of another sleep schedule off the internet. Join me on Patreon. That's where I walk you through a ton of things. You're going to see pace bottle feeding demos, you'll hear real mom stories, and you're just going to get a lot of support. You're doing amazing. Keep feeding, keep trusting, and I'll see you next time here on Spill the Milk. Have a good one.